Today we're joined by Charles Ruggiero, a drummer whose remarkable journey spans jazz, rock, and everything in between. Growing up as the son of legendary jazz musician Vinnie Ruggiero, Charles was immersed in music from a young age, surrounded by icons like Art Blakey and Freddie Hubbard. His career has been equally dynamic, from touring with Chuck Mangione and collaborating with Steve Gadd to rocking the stages with Circus Diablo. So join us as we delve into his incredible story, creative process, and the experiences that have shaped his unique and versatile career. So, Charles, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having me, man, and thanks for a nice intro.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so we were just talking before we started recording, and one of the interesting things about your career is going back and forth between the East Coast and the West Coast. There, New York City and California have superb, scenes, music scenes, and particular jazz scenes. So, can you kind of walk us through those different points and some of the highlights of it?
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, I'm from Rochester, New York, so I'm from upstate New York, and so I that's where that's where I came up, and but I wanted to get to New York City as fast as I could. So like the second I graduated high school, I was like, see ya, you know what I mean, and immediately split back to, went to New York, and the truth is, I was in New York at a very magical time. Like the jazz scene in New York in the early '90s was like I got there in 1990, and I went. I wanted to. I couldn't fathom just showing up there. So I did go to college. I went to Manhattan School of Music. I did 2 years there before I was unceremoniously asked to not come back. Um, I but by that time I was already working, like I was already kind of on the scene, and that was a real there was a real resurgence of jazz music in the '90s in New York City particularly. you know um and so it was a great time to be there. I mean, it was like, a lot of the guys who are the top dogs today,
Peter
were.
Bernstein, Brad Meldau, you know,
Yep.
some of the
Yeah,
most
though,
important
yeah,
people.
Joshua Redman and Roy Hargrove, and the Chris Potter, and like a lot of those guys, Mark Turner, we were all sort of there at the same time, and that was Kurt Rosenwinkel. That was like the scene that I ran in.
Yeah. Super important
And
period.
yeah, yeah, I mean, really, and it was magical time. Like I said, like we had no idea that what I mean, like we were just like trying to live up to the giants that came 20 and 30 years before us. You know what I mean? Like the late 50s and early 60s was kind of like that period of music was really what we were kind of all gunning for. Like we were making our bones trying to make music like that, and then from there grew, into everybody having sort of their new voices. And so I was really lucky. I was really lucky to get to play with all those people we just named, and be in bands with them, and do sessions and hang, and you know what I mean, all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, and this is
and
before
sort of
9/11 too, and I people say New York changed a
yes.
lot after that.
Oh, it was. I mean, it's looking back on it now, it's insane how much that changed. The landscape of how the city is, and that sort of leads to I didn't leave New York because of that. Like I did feel like I had joined a rock band, and we were, there's a kind of a whole thing, right? I was playing with those guys, and that was, like I said, the scene that I was on, and then I got called from Chuck Mangione, right? He was looking for a drummer, and I was playing $50 gigs, like, you know what I mean? It was hard to make ends meet back in those days, you know what I mean? I didn't, it was tough, and so Chuck Mangione came calling, and like that was a real paycheck. So I was like, see you later, dudes. I was like, I want to make some money, and tour the world and whatnot. That's what we were all gunning for. So like I went and did that, and then my mother got sick and passed away, and I was I was having some problems at that time, like interpersonally and with like drug and alcohol abuse. And so like I left music for a little while. I quit playing for about a year and a half. I didn't play at all. And like after my tenure with Mangione ended, and it's not that's not exactly the timeline, but more or less like, I was working with Chuck and things were good, and then I left that band and things were not good for a while, and then my mother passed away, and I sort of hit the skids, you know what I mean? And I left music for a bit, and and traded it in for a bottle of Jim Beam, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And after, yeah, which was a really rough time in my life, and and then there was a bar that I was working at. I was a bartender. I just was like, it's like easy, good, easy money, free booze, free drugs, what I mean? Basically was like what I was kind of like, that's what I was trying to live for at that time. I was so unhappy, and, and so there was a friend of mine who was starting a band, and she wanted me to play drums on some demos, and I did. And then that basically turned into the band Slunt. And that kind of rose without my permission. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want that band to go anywhere. Like I thought it was stupid. I was just like, this shit is dumb, you know? But it kept getting better. Like it kept like, they mean the songs would get better as we would go, and the crowds would get bigger. And then we got like, we added a guitar player, and then we got like, like it became like a real band. And then it became really something that I started to love and believe in. And so, and when that band ended, that's when we had come out to LA a bunch, and I had made some friends out here. And I was a typical New Yorker at the time who thought like LA is fucking lame, and New York is the only cool place in the world, young and stupid,
Yeah, they're just different
and
too, right? They're just
yeah, they're
different.
different. I mean, and
Yeah,
there are
that's
things
it.
about LA that smoke shit in LA or in New York. You know what I mean? There's things that are way better out here. I mean, that's why I moved back. Like, even when I went back to New York, and then I was like, what am I doing? And so when, so Slunt ended, our singer got pregnant, and we were really cruising, and we were really headed towards something really good, but our singer got pregnant, and we couldn't really maintain, she had to like, we had to take time off so she could have a baby. And like, and in the music business, if you kind of got to strike while the iron's hot. Like we were not able as a band to sort of sustain, like through that period where you're really like when you're on the edge of becoming something, like you've got to push the envelope and push and push and push. And we backed off, and the band ended, But her husband was in a band called Circus Diablo. Her husband Brett Scallions from Fuel, and he was in a band like Billy Duffy from The Cult was in the band, and there, and Ricky Warwick from The Almighty, and the drummer was Matt Sorum, and Matt couldn't do it because he was doing a Velvet Revolver, so he couldn't go on the road with this band. So they knew I was available. They called me, and they were like, look, you have to move to LA. Like we're about to do Ozfest. We have our record coming out. And I was like, bet. I was like, let's go. You know what I mean? Because I liked it out here. I had learned to like it out here through my time with Slunt, And so I got here, and when I landed here, that's really when my life changed. And part of that is because that's when I stopped using drugs and alcohol. Like I got sober in '07 when right after we did the Ozfest tour. Um, and by all accounts, my life looked good. You know what I mean? Like I was on tour on Ozfest, and like I had some money in the bank, and like, living in LA, and, you know, but I was dying inside. And so I put down the drugs and alcohol, and really my life began in a new way. Um, and in a certain sense, I feel like I became an adult here. So I really like, there is a part of me that really feels more like an Angelino now than a New Yorker, which is sacrilegious, I think, for people from like, the tri-state of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, like we're Boston, like we're tough, we're East Coast tough, and it's like, don't lose your edge. It's like, well, man, I don't know that my edge is really serving me, actually. Like, I'm unhappy. This edge is actually making me unhappy. It's funny. Bill Burr, I just saw an interview with Bill Burr, and he was kind of talking about the same thing. Like, I don't know that that was really serving me. So anyway, I got sober, and I, like I said, I feel like sort of had a second adolescence, like a more like real adolescence here in LA, and I really feel like I got roots here. But of course, like, you know what I mean? You don't, you know, of course, there was still that part of me that was like, fucking LA is stupid, you know, like, I don't like the way they do things here. Like, New York is cool. And, you know, I'm going to go back home. Like, I don't want to end up living out here my whole life. You know, I want to get back to New York where I can stay hard and stay, get my edge, you know? And, you know, and I moved, and it's funny, I moved back to New York and,
This is around 2020,
this is 20 like 13. It was about
2013, right?
2013, you know what I mean? And like I said, like I got sober and my life started like really, you know, it kind of took off. Like, you know, when I was in LA, like you know, I ran into Larry Goldings and he was literally, you know, he lives out here and Larry was like, you know, we ran into each other at a gig and it's a friend of our but mutual friend's gig and he's like, are you living here? And I was like, yeah. He's like, dude, I got a gig. Like, let's go, you know? And like everybody comes out to see Larry, like all the cats in LA, like they all come out to see him and because he's so amazing. And that was like my introduction because I had been playing rock and roll for like almost 10 years, like almost exclusively. I mean, I made some jazz records and I was playing jazz still, but like on a very kind of like just with my boys, you know, kind of thing. And so I came to LA and people here were like, who is this fucking guy? You know what I mean? And I started working, you know, I like really immediately translated into working with some other
Well, you know,
people and
I'm younger than you, and it's like when I'm because I remember like you know I had seen you play in New York. I think but Smalls probably,
yeah,
and,
probably.
and you know because I'm younger, it was just like you kind of you know I'm like oh who is this person? Then in my generation would say who is this person? You
Right,
know,
right. Who is, yeah, 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 totally.
but
Because like
was that so when you went back, it was like you're just have it's a new you because of what you went through and just the next part of the journey in a sense. But as the new resurgence happened.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that like not only did it's funny like it's funny to me like you know not that I have ever gauged my success or my career in this way, but like you know people that you don't know recognize you, it's an indicator that your art has reached beyond your circle. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I have had like plenty of moments like that. Not nearly on a scale that I like that I kind of wished I was when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like I wanted people to, you know, I wanted people to like recognize me for being a really great drummer. Like that's what I wanted because that's the only thing I felt like I was any good at when I was little. And I wanted to have like I was kind of a bad kid. Like I was, you know, I was broken home and all that stuff, a lot of trauma when I was young. And so the only thing I was really good at was music, or at least that's what I thought. Like that in my mind, that's all I thought because like I was getting kicked out of school all the time, always in the principal's office, always like I tell this story like my first day of first grade, they put me in the front corner. They were like, "You have to face the wall." Like first day of for by lunchtime, you know, because I was so like, you know what I mean? I was so crazy and so, you know, I was like seeking attention and like, you know, I was just always so I was always in trouble. So I always had this image of myself as a detriment to the world, except when I played drums. Like it was like I was in the principal's office when I got a letter from our state senator saying like, congratulations, you've been awarded this, you know, all state band thing. You know, it's like it was this crazy mixed messaging, you know? And so I really searched I was really on the hunt to be recognized when I was young. And it's funny because like that has happened to me since, but like not like I thought it would. You know what I mean? Like
You know,
not
no,
like
but
I
that's an
thought it would.
interesting. You know, out of all the people I've interviewed, and you know, you're so honest, and I understand what you're saying. You're like that need to be recognized in a sense
Yeah.
because
Wait, no.
I felt that way in the past too. But I don't. It comes from we don't know where the hell it comes from. Something, right?
See, I think I do. Like I feel like I know. Like that's kind of what I'm driving at. Really is like my my self esteem was was like so low because I the messages and the life that I like the messages I got and the life that I lived was basically reinforced this idea that I had, not a
When
truth.
you were younger, yeah,
Yeah, like yeah,
when you were a kid.
I had this false idea that I was somehow bad or less than or like a burden to you and to society and whatever. Like you're a bad kid. Except so like the only time and like I even got even bad attention for me was good attention. Like at least someone's paying attention to me. Like I felt, you know, like I couldn't, no one could see me. You know what I mean? Like, and so even when I was bad, like at least we were engaged. You know what I mean? At least you were talking to me or whatever. And the only good attention I ever got was this other thing, the thing that had to do with music and being good at it, you
That's
know?
it. That's so interesting you're talking about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had like a similar situation, like with a tumultuous relationship with my brother when I was younger. I mean, it's changed. No, it's not anymore, but it went on for like decades, you know. So it's
Right.
like, but these
Yeah.
things can create this artistic where we should be looking here, and we can kind of get dissuaded into other things. But I get it,
Yeah.
what you're saying in a different way, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's like I really appreciate like you said a few minutes ago you're like you're really honest, and I feel like to me that's as valuable a compliment to me as like man you're swinging or man you got chops or wow that feels great. Like I've learned to value other things. Like my perspective was so sideways when I was young because I just didn't have like we talk all the time about like when I do interviews like this people always want to talk about my dad and how amazing he was, and he was in no uncertain terms one of the greatest drummers to ever walk this earth. He was bonkers. Like he sounds so good it's ridiculous. If you don't know who he is, go. There's a Slide Hampton record called Exodus. And if you listen to his drumming on that record, you will be a changed person. Like it's so ridiculous, you know? He sounds like Philly Joe's hands with Elvin's feet. You know what I mean? But like it's so and there's no piano on the record, so it's like there's so much room for drums and he's just playing his ass off. It's ridiculous. But what I don't end up talking about a lot is the fact that like he was dead by the time like my mom had to leave him because he was a drug addict. And so we were, she left in the middle of the night with three children and three pillows and that's it. And like she had to get away because she was afraid for our lives. And so he was dead by the time I was 8. So like I didn't have like and my mom was busy trying to feed us. So I didn't really have anyone to like teach me how to be. I didn't have anyone to like teach me the lessons of life. I had to kind of figure it out for myself. And the truth is, I'm a fucking ding dong. Like the truth is, everything that happened. I took the wrong lesson from it. Like there's this friend I have who tells a story about he has a sister who was mentally ill, like legitimately mentally ill, and I'll spare you the whole story because I know we're short on time, but like effectively what happened was she stabbed him in the kitchen with a kitchen knife. Like she fucking stabbed him. And he talks about when we talk about this because he's like the thing that I took away from that experience, the learning lesson that could have been wasn't he said the thing I took away was like, oh, you can't trust women. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's what he took away. Like somehow or another, like no one like sort of was able to say, look, that she's mentally ill and has nothing to do with you, and it really doesn't even have anything to do with her. She's maladjusted, whatever. Like couldn't he had to figure it out for himself, and his best work was to think like like women you can't trust them, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I laugh because it's such an incredible illustration of like if we don't if we're not paying attention or we've been given the wrong information or we're left to our own devices a lot of the time, like I'm going to take certainly as a 7 or 8 or 9 year old kid, like I was taking the wrong lesson from everything that happened to me, and it formed this vision in my mind of of this person who I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so everything I was grabbing for was to feed somebody I wasn't even in the first place.
And you know what
And
the thing
so,
is too is like our brains aren't done developing like until we're 25. So this type of
yeah,
stuff, things can happen to people in their teens or even in their early
totally.
20s, you know? It's just like that's a
Yeah.
long time, 25 years, you know?
Yeah. And so if I didn't have, like, I really believe this, like, I'm not a person that can see the future or thinks that I know what would happen if this other thing happened instead. Like, I don't play that game. That's something I've learned to do. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. It's part of my healing. But I will say, like, man, that, like, if it wasn't for music, if it didn't have something spiritual and good and sustainable, like tethering me to the ground, I don't think I would have made it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, I would have just been, I would have, I would have blown it somehow or another.
Wow.
Against my best efforts, I've survived. You know what I mean? Like, I tried to check out. You know what I mean? And I don't, I don't, I did a lot of, I tried to end it early in a bunch of different ways. Not all of them, not all of them like, literal suicide attempts necessarily. Like, you know what I mean? There was something that you could call that when I was young, but, that's how, like, but the thing is, like, I have, through my sobriety and through the growth that I've had, and that, like I said, the spiritual experience of playing music and getting better at that, and having more opportunities and doing more, and growing my internal life. You know what I mean? Like, all of the, I would, I actually, I can say that it's like, that's all behind me now. I still have demons and I still have troubles, and certainly not a perfect person, or like a fucking great dude, or, I mean, but I'm a good man, and I have learned over time how to be more of that every day. You know what I mean? And and like, I've sort of righted my ship. You know what I mean? Like, I've righted the course that I was on, and and that's actually, like, to kind of bring it back around. That's what sort of brought me to the decisions that I made, to, like I said, like, I was silly to think, like, oh, New York is awesome and LA sucks. That's my old bullshit thinking. And, like, when I got to New York, and I was like, what the hell? Why did I leave? Like, I loved it there. Like, I didn't even know that I loved it there until I split. And so I had another incredible 3 years in New York City, which I wouldn't trade for the world.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
I mean, like
knew that,
I was like, man, this guy is like amazing, you know, and it's just part of your story in that way, you know, and
yeah.
that's how I discovered your music and stuff. So
When was that you saw me or discovered my playing, or whatever, however you
probably
want
around
to say that?
2000, probably 2015, I would say, or 16, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great. Yeah. And that's
2015, I
right.
think when I heard you play or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Like, at small, as you said.
Yeah. I mean, and I was I would have said hello, but I was probably too shy or something, at the
Oh,
time.
man.
I know.
All
But
right. So this is for anybody out there who might hear this and try to think that they might be too shy. Like, definitely don't be shy. Like, definitely come and say hello. Like, because, and the reason being is, like, because it's things like this. It's meeting people and being able to tell, like, it's being able to pass it on, that has become, like, one of the premier and primary things of my life, is to, like, give it, like, and it goes to what I was saying, right? I didn't have anybody to, like, show me the way when I was a kid. I had to fucking stumble around in the dark. And I don't regret it. I mean, I don't regret it, because I like who I am today, and I like my life. I love my life, and I love myself. But that wasn't always the case, you know? And so I'm a real believer in, like, sending the elevator back down for the next person. And so anytime I can maybe arm somebody with some knowledge that prevents them from having to suffer for one more minute than they have to, then cool. You
Yeah,
know
and
what I
that's the
mean?
thing too. I mean, like we're like that's one of the I like my podcast called the Rabbit Hole Sessions, and I like when people are honest and talk about, these things that make them who they are instead of the superficial stuff. Um,
Yeah. What am I going to do?
because
Teach you how to, like, this is what a 5-stroke roll is, or hey, on this
exactly.
record, I played a paradiddle instead of a thing over here. Like, like figure that out on your own. Like, you have to walk the path, bro. Like, I can show you, and this is again same thing, right? I don't tell anybody what to do. Like the people that come study with me, like I don't tell you what to do. Like you do what you want to do. All I can do is show you what I did. And then you can either take that and like maybe that will work for you too. It's just like I'm a believer that all we do is like is point to the target. It's like that's where it's at. Like this is how I found what I found. And
Yeah.
like maybe that's a path for you. It might not be. Like it might not be a path for you, you know?
And you
But
say
it
something
but
else too that's interesting because you're really happy with the person you are today. There's this whole misconception among people, the masses, that your 20s and your 30s are your best time and all that. I'm like, life
bullshit.
gets better as you get older. I wouldn't change, like, 'cause
100%.
I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life just because of all the stuff that I learned in the journey. I don't, it's not the best is yet to come.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Like my life has gotten better exponentially as I've aged. I think like, oh, maybe I should shave my beard. It's getting really white. Like it shows my age, but like, I'm just like, not on a bet, dude. Like I'm
Yeah.
proud. I'm proud. Like I wear, I mean, it's a silly maybe expression of it, but like I wear my scars proudly. Like I earned this shit. You know what I mean? I was not given this life. I earned this life. And again, like anytime I can help, I can like just say like, I say it like this, right? So I live about 45 minutes from Los Angeles airport. Yeah, 30 minutes, maybe 30 or 40 minutes from Los Angeles, depending on the
And
traffic
from
or the
LAX.
LAX, from
Yeah.
LAX, right? It's like, so from here to there, there's like literally an infinite number of ways you could go there, right? You could drive to Kansas City and take a plane. Like it's not maybe the best, maybe it's not the most efficient way to go, but it's like, maybe you see something on your way to Kansas City that changes your life. So like my whole thing is like there's no wrong way to get there. There's only the long way to get there. And sometimes that's okay. Like it's but what I try to do is like get is tell people like this is how I got there. I got there this way. Maybe that's the best way for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe 75% of my path is what you should take. You know what I mean? And maybe not. Like so it really does for me again, like it's not about telling people what to do. It's about showing people what I did and sharing with people what I did because that might open that door for somebody, like I said, to just suffer a little bit less because the truth is music isn't about like the blues or whatever. It's not about suffering. It's not about that. It's about overcoming. You know what I mean? And it's a and at any event, it's an expression of what we are. If all you've ever done is suffer, then you're going to express suffering. If you've overcome, you're going to express overcoming. If you are sad, you're going to express sadness. If you are happy, you're going to express joy. Like and that's what all art, I mean, you can see my house, like it's just art everywhere. It's like it's all like visual, sonic, whatever, like it's all expressions
Yeah.
of
The
and,
problem.
and that's what we have to share with each other, you know.
Well, it's interesting. That's such a great point because most of the jazz musicians, the younger musicians, and even older musicians too, it's like they could be so caught up in like this is all they talk about in a sense, and it's just like kind of annoying when it's like everyone really has their story, and like you're saying, it's the expression of everything else of what we've been through.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
stuff is what we've been through, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only thing you can really show people, again, it's like I don't show people like I mean there are people who like need some help with their technique and like that, of course I'm going to help with that, or like they're not getting something. But again, even that, it's like, oh, if you change this about your technique, you'll be able to express yourself better. It's not because like I think you're going to hurt your ankle because you're not playing heel up or heel down or whatever. Like it's not that. It's like, oh, you have more. I have a student right now who's an incredible drummer, like hands like I've never seen. He's a nasty young man, but his bass drum foot is all fakakta. Like his bass drum foot is like not. He just doesn't have the facility, and I'm just like, look, you are short. Like when he plays heel up, he can play a lot. But I'm just like the fact that you can't play with your heel down. It's like you're shortchanging your own ability to express. It's like you're only coloring with red in your foot instead of red and purple and brown and green. And like it's like you got one color here instead of the whole. And it like kind of blew his mind. He was like, "Oh my God!" Like I only thought your hands mattered. And I was like, "No, no, no!" Like so again, it's what I end up focusing on with a lot of my students is more like how you can express yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to express. I'm going to try to make it so that you're more in touch with how to express yourself.
That's what a teacher's supposed to do at the end of the day, you know? And
Yeah.
everyone's so locked, you know, I don't have to tell you what people are locked into, especially in the drum world in a sense,
Yeah.
which is
Of
important when
course.
you're starting out. You have to know how to play, your
Yeah.
rudiments and understand the syncopation book and stuff. But,
Right.
that's beginning, you know.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Charles,
I've
this
got
is sorry, what were you saying?
no, no, no. That's okay. You go.
Oh no, we're getting towards the end of the interview, but this is probably like one of the best ones we've done because of you know, your openness to talk about your story and stuff, and that's probably why the way you play the way you do, because you have, that openness. Nothing is, you're not holding those things in. So just thank you so much for doing this. This is
And I
great.
appreciate that. That's a very like again, like that's such a kind compliment. That's such a meaningful compliment uh to hear. I really appreciate you. That's like again, like that's something I value now is like that, you know. That's what look, man, that's the shit that makes us all special. Like like there is a certain point where like is Steve Gadd's five-stroke roll better than Vinnie Colaiuta's five-stroke roll? Like, no, like, or better than Jeff Watts, or better than Bill Stewart, or whoever you know what I mean, whoever you. It's like at a certain point
If
that
I
the
heard that,
technique.
I'd want to leave the room if I heard that conversation.
You know what I mean? It's like it's and people, dude, believe me, people
I
get
know.
on that stuff, and it's like it's so funny to me that it's like those. I talk about this a lot, right? There's like a hammer is a tool. Its job is to drive in a nail. It has a very specific, or to take a nail out. Like it's got a very specific job, right? A musical instrument is just a tool. Like I don't care. Like, can you imagine somebody walking around with saying, "I use a hammer better than anybody else"? You know what I mean? Or just like, look at how fast I can use this hammer, or look how quiet I can use this hammer, or whatever. It's like it's like it's not about how well you wield the instrument, because at the end of the day the instrument has one purpose: to fulfill it's like to fulfill its purpose, right? In a hammer it's to drive in or take out a nail. With drums it's like the at the end of the day its purpose is to express music. It's not like, oh, I can play a five-stroke roll in this way, or play fast, or play in odd time signatures, or whatever. It's like, can you express yourself there or not? And if you're not doing that, then I just feel like you're just like, I have this image in my mind of a person walking around with a hammer, like, I'm the best hammer user. I can do anything with this. It's like, yeah, well, okay. Who
Let's
cares?
let's
You know?
that's a great way to end. I love that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Awesome, awesome.